The 2024 NHL entry draft is definitely one of the more interesting in years because after Celebrini, who will of course go to the Sharks at 1, the top 15 is absolutely wide open and the picks will come down to team preferences more than any other year because there are so many players that are in the same tier of prospects. This is my final part of the top 15 prospect series, so make sure you check out the top 5 and top 10 that I've already released. So let's get into the picks 11 through 15. The more I researched and watched game tape on Zeev, the more I regretted in not having him in my top 10, and it's worth saying that there's a very real possibility that he could still be the first or second defenseman off the board. This year in the NCAA, he won the national championship with Denver, and Buium put up an insane stat line of 11 goals, 39 assists for 50 points in only 42 games as a freshman. Zeev's bread and butter is his intelligence with the puck when it's on his stick. He's always scanning the ice for passing lanes, which should allow him to have elite potential in terms of being a puck-carrying power play QB type player in the NHL. His speed and acceleration are pretty good, but it's worth noting that his mechanics are still a little choppy, which funny enough I kind of consider a good thing, because whatever team ends up taking him can fix his stride. He can go from an above average skater to a great one, at which point he could have the potential to become a true number 1 D-man. His defensive positioning and play reading ability is just okay, but that's the case for most draft-eligible defensemen these days. The only real hole in his game is his lack of physicality at his size and occasional unwillingness to impose himself in front of the net, which can make him a liability at times during broken plays in his own zone. Overall, Zeev's a great prospect whose ceiling is comparable to Shea Theodore's of the Golden Knights. The only reason I don't have him above the other 3 D-men is the fact that he doesn't have the advantage of playing on the right side like Levshunov or Dickinson, and he doesn't have the size of Silyev. There's no better pure goal scorer in this year's draft than Cole Eiserman. This guy absolutely terrorizes goalie with a shot. With the US NTDP this year, Eiserman put up 58 goals and 89 points in just 57 games, which was good enough to break records set by Cole Caulfield, Austin Matthews, and Phil Kessel in their time with the program. His shot and offensive instincts make him a threat whenever and wherever he is in the offensive zone, not to mention that he attracts so much attention from opposing defensive schemes that it often leaves teammates open for a pass that Cole can make more often than not. He's super deceptive and creative with the puck, which can be a bit of a double-edged sword because at times he's almost too confident with the puck, which can lead to some pretty brutal turnovers. His biggest flaw, and the reason he's fallen off so much since the release of draft boards earlier in the year, is his basically non-existent defensive game. He often takes shifts off and just doesn't seem to care in the D-zone and skates right by his coverage in hopes of getting a breakaway or kicking off an offensive rush. Don't get me wrong, he's a great player and could be an electric forward for a smaller market team in need of a player to sell some tickets, but unless he fleshes out his two-way game a bit, he may be a type of player that looked great on the stat sheet, but could find it difficult to contribute to a team's success beyond that unless he's with line mates that can take over some of his defensive duties, sort of like a Patrick Laine. At 13, we have the big left shot forward Liam Greentree. At first glance, his stats jump off the board, putting up 36 goals and 54 assists for 90 points in just 64 games this year in the OHL. So for those who haven't watched much game tape, you might be wondering how Greentree isn't projected to go higher, and the answer is quite simple. His skating is quite possibly the worst in the first round of the 2024 class. His strides look heavy and lumbering, which means he has little to no separation speed, which could really shy some teams away from drafting him in the top 10 or 15 because of how fast the NHL game is becoming. Greentree compensates for this lack of speed with a truly amazing and diverse offensive skill set. He's a great passer and is creative without the puck as well, and he always seems to find a way to slip away from coverage to find open ice. His two-way game is pretty solid too, and his competitive drive is through the roof, so he's definitely serviceable in his own end with quite a bit of room to get even better. His absolute ceiling is comparable to that of Jason Robertson, which could be attractive to some teams, but he's somewhat of a high-risk pick, especially if he cannot improve on his skating. At 14, we have Beckett Sennecke, who's been one of the biggest risers on most draft boards as the season progressed because of a great performance in the OHL playoffs. The regular season was just sort of average though, with 68 points in 63 games, but it's worth noting that for about the first half of the year he was sharing time between the first and second line for Oshawa. which could explain his less than stellar totals, especially for a lottery pick. He's much more offensively gifted than his numbers give him credit for though, and he possesses a great combination of size, standing at 6'2", and puck skills, which are among the best in the draft, not to mention his skating is pretty excellent as well. Beckett Sennecke really is a true power forward with a high competitive motor and could be the first player of this type off the boards if some teams have significant concerns over the injury proneness of Caden Lindstrom. He'll definitely need another year or two or seasoning in the OHL, where he'll need to learn to put all his skills together to become an elite point producer at the junior level before he's ready to make the leap to the big leagues. But by all accounts, he projects to become an impact top 6 forward in the NHL and is one of the safest picks in the draft because of how high his floor is. Think of a slightly more offensively gifted Kirby Dach of the Montreal Canadiens. Rounding out the top 15 is the Norwegian right-winger Brandsegg-Nygard. I absolutely love this prospect at the end of the lottery. He's got some decent size at 6'1" and almost 200 pounds as an 18-year-old. The best way to describe Brandsegg is as a skilled grinder. His two-way IQ is one of the best in the class amongst forwards, and he's an absolute puck hound in battles along the boards, which he frequently won this year as an underage player in Sweden's second division. His offensive game is not bad either by any means, but it definitely needs some polishing. Over the course of 41 games this year in the Allsvenskan, Brandsegg put up 8 goals and 10 assists for 18 points without playing much on the top line or power play. He's sort of a jack of all trades on the ice, which is his biggest asset, but also the reason he may slip, because he's also a master of none, so no part of his game is elite, but all of it is above average to very good. Brandsegg is sort of a difficult prospect to project, but from watching his game tapes over the last few weeks, he reminds me a lot of a bigger Jonathan Marchessault, which could be very attractive to teams in the latter half of the lottery like St. Louis or Minnesota. All of these players could realistically go in the top 10, that's just how wide open this year's draft is. Thanks for watching, and make sure you check out the rest of the Prospect series where we took a look at the top 5 and top 10 projected picks. We'll be releasing more videos in our Prospect series, including the top 30 projections as we get closer to the draft, and longer form prospect profiles, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on those.